Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you might be the kind of person who longs for warm, balmy climes. You might be thinking of sunny days and sandy beaches, but not I, not me. I am over the moon because winter has arrived. Yes, winter has arrived. The temperatures are low, the snow is falling, and I have a score to settle. Last winter, I made a powder surfer. I put a lot of material, many hours, time, and invested it all to try to make this quasi-snowboard that I could then try to use and ride. And I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot about composite work. I learned a lot about the materials involved in making a snowboard. Went out and visited my brother and had a lot of fun riding with him, but at the end of the day, it didn't work. You couldn't turn. Well, it's a year later, and it's time to fix that. So starting today, we're going to be making Powder Surfer version 2. And the first thing we need is a template. This is the template from last year's Powder Surfer. Without getting into the kind of three-dimensional hull type geometry that we made last year, this actually worked pretty well. Not a whole lot to improve on here. I would like to have a little bit more flat. There was not enough flat with the stance that I had and that my brother had. But if we add a little bit more flat to the shape, this is a pretty good profile. So the first thing we need to do is make a new version of this template. Sweet! Okay, so what we need next is a block of material that we can then use a router with this profile to get us a consecutive set of spars that will be our press. Now, if you were really confident in your shape while you were making this, you can make it out of MDF or plywood, something that would not move very much, something that's got some density to it. However, for me, this is still an experimental setup, so I want something that's going to be a little cheaper so that I can iterate on it. What I'm going to use is a high-density insulation foam. Insulation foam comes in a bunch of different ratings for how insulating it is. You want something that's 8 or above because that'll indicate that it's very dense. Something that's 8 or above will hold up in a vacuum bag or a low poundage press just fine. And since this is a prototype, that's what we're going to be using. I'm going to cut some blanks out of that, and then I'm going to use a router to cut that flush to this shape that we just made. Now the foam that I'm working with is 2 inches thick, so ideally the tool that you would want to use for that is a 2-inch or more down-cut helical router bit with a top bearing. That way you can follow the profile and cut right through it. Now the router that I have has a 1/4 inch collet, and the only bit that I could find, it wasn't even a helical cut, flush cut, straight edge, bearing top, router bit. The only one I could find that wasn't $80 or $100 was on Amazon, and it would have shipped from China. It wouldn't have gotten here till April. It's not going to do me any good in April. So I did something incredibly stupid. I did a quick test. I chucked just a normal drill bit into my router, 1/4 inch drill bit so that it would fit the collet, and I used that to see if it would cut the foam. I can run the shank of the drill bit along the form, and that'll give me a guide, and since it's foam and not something denser, well, it worked. This is highly stupid. Don't do it. Really, really stupid. Okay. Okay. Let's try that again. Incredibly stupid, take 2. I mean, that's pretty messed up. Those edges are real rough. The whole point of this is obviously to do it fast, but we want it to be smooth. Now, this was the offcut. The part that's actually cut to the template is quite a bit smoother. But if we're trying to do it fast and dirty, this might just be the way to go. Don't do it fast and dirty. Go buy yourself the right tools. Don't do this. This is dumb. Here's the story there. Drill bits are not rated for that high of an RPM, and there's a very good chance that the rotational force on the bit will shear it, it'll snap and fly across the room. I'm going to be wearing eye protection. Ideally, I would have a face shield. Even more ideally, I wouldn't be doing this at all, but I can't wait for these tools to arrive, so I'm going to be doing this. If you're going to pursue a project like this, either get the right kind of bit, get a router with a 1/2 inch collet because your bit options are much higher. Use a jigsaw, use a knife, use whatever you need to use to get these things to follow your template. Spend a little bit more time on the sanding. This is really a half solution. I'm hoping it's going to work for me, but I can't recommend it. It's not safe. So be smart, use the right tools. That said, let's use the wrong tools. So good news, stupid tool decisions aside, that actually did work. Really, really can't recommend it. I realized halfway through that although my eyes were protected, if that drill bit broke off and flung away, the closest thing was my gut, and it would have been moving very fast. So please stay safe, don't make stupid decisions, use the right tools for the job. What's next? Well, we have to glue all these together so that they're a nice solid mass. Then we're going to take a belt sander and a random orbital sander and smooth out all these places where the template didn't quite get stuff to line up right. We're going to back it on some wood so that we've got a nice strong surface to clamp against when we squeeze the whole mold together, because this is actually going to be too wide for the press. And when all that's said and done, what we'll have is a powder surfer mold that we can then use to press our boards. So let's do it. Alright, well, a couple days later, the glue is dry on our two mold halves. We've got a bottom and a top, and they're pretty rough. So what I'm going to do now is take a coarse rasp, knock down all the high spots, and then hit it with a sander while trying to keep everything nice and flat and level so that we've got a nice flat surface to ride on our snow with. For a powder surfer, it will make a huge amount of difference unless you're really on some hard pack, but I figure it's better to do it that way than not. So I guess it's time to add more pink stuff to the floor of the workshop. Check it out. top half of the mold, when I was routing it, some of the slats got gouged out, so I'm just gonna go in with some spare foam that I have from another mold, fill those in before resurfacing it. Alright, I want to just do a quick test fit. Ah, that's so much better. Hell yeah. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Nice, tight seam. That's what I'm talking about. It's gonna be great. The next thing I wanted to do, because some of the staves, again, were a little bit uneven from the routing technique that I used, was to take the mold halves and run them through a planer so that I could get a nice flat surface on the bottom and top. And then I could use that flat surface to glue to just a wooden backing so that the mold halves would have a little bit of strength. Now I have a planer, but it's up in this new workspace that I have building up, and it is cold up there. So the first thing that we needed to do was make it a little bit more cozy. And as soon as that was done, we were ready to tackle the planing. And I figured since I had to compress the mold halves anyway to glue the backing to the molds, that I would throw some material in there and get started on the first powder surfer. So in this layout, we're combining the backing for the bottom half of the mold, the bottom half of the mold, a layup for a board, so 3 sheets of Baltic birch, and then the top half of the mold and the backing for the top half of the mold. No clamps. What's a boy to do? I'm just kidding. I know the answer. Lots of heavy stuff. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of heavy stuff. So now we're back down in the dungeon. We've got our molds, and they're done. And they work. This is that blank that I pressed. You can see that I've already kind of traced a template on it and started adding some color, but it's got some nice curves, just the way we want it. So this is a pretty cheap, fast, inexpensive, easy technique if you're interested in making some molds and pressing some boards. You saw how easy it was for me to press this shape. All I did was pile heavy stuff on top of it. If you've got a bunch of clamps, you could just use clamps and do the same thing. If you've got a press, use a press. If you've got a vac bag, just use the bottom half of something like this. Round off all the corners so you don't tear your bag, but you could use this kind of press with a vac bag too. The materials for this mold: 1 sheet of insulation foam, 2 6-foot lengths of 1x12 pine. It's pretty cheap. You can get started in snowboard making with just that. That's a pretty low barrier to entry. If you've been thinking about making boards and been scared away by big heavy equipment, you don't need all that. You can just get started. Now, here's where we're going from here. As you can see, I started a plain powder surfer. This is going to be a plain wood one. No fancy schmancy. And I'm going to try to make 2 boards beyond that. I'm going to try to make a slightly more advanced powder surfer. And I'm not going to talk to the third project that I'm going to do yet. But it's all going to be with this mold. I'm hoping that this mold will be pretty robust and that we'll be able to get a diverse set of outcomes with it. So I'm really excited with how this is working so far. Stoked about what the next couple months entail and the projects that we're going to be doing and I'm going to be sharing with you. I really hope this is something you guys think you can make use of. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the subscribe, stick around for the rest of the projects that are coming up this winter. There's going to be a lot. They're going to be exciting. And until next time, I'll see you soon.